Marine reacts to SCP-1770, also known as the Maker of Chains, and is object class Euclid, and is considered a self-replicating SCP by the Vulcan. As always, I'm going to be posting a link to the original video and channel down in the description below, so go ahead and make sure that you check them out. Alright, real quick, I know most of you probably already know, if you've been seeing this channel for a while, that I try to upload a video every single day. Obviously, yesterday marks the second day that I wasn't able to, mainly due to just timing issues. My PC, for some reason, sometimes going slower at times and then picking up the speed, and it kind of goes back and forth. Not really sure what's going on there. And also, I'm not a very big tech guy. I'm not really good at this stuff, so but I'm learning it as I go along. And yeah, just sometimes videos are going to be late, but just know that every video is still going to come out on the day it was supposed to, even if it's coming out the day after, if that makes sense. So even though there's a video that technically released today at 1 a.m., close to 1 a.m., I'm still going to release this video. That way I can at least keep the video, the amount of videos I would have made in a year, uploading every single day, and at least have that number. Hope that wasn't too confusing, because I'm kind of confusing myself right now. Alright, so getting back to SCP-1770, the Maker of Chains. I don't really know too much information. I'm pretty much just going off the title itself. It looks like it was humanoid. Obviously made out of chains and self-replicating. I wonder what would be the extent that it's going to be able to do that, if it's infinite or if it has a certain amount or a certain limit. But it's Euclid, so it should be pretty easy to contain. And honestly, it was just a thumbnail that really got me to want to check out this SCP. But before we get into the actual video, don't forget to like, subscribe. It really does help me a lot. Hit that notification bell right there, so you get notified every time I do upload. Sometimes uploading twice a day. Typically working on them in the mornings and releasing them in the late afternoon to late evening. That way when you all get off work, you can enjoy these videos at your leisure. So without further ado, let's go ahead and see what SCP-1770, or the Maker of Chains, is all about.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Miller, and the SCP we're going to be looking at today is SCP-1770. Object Class: Euclid. Special Containment Procedures. SCP-1770 is to be held in a standard reinforced humanoid containment chamber in Site-19's maximum security wing. While the subject has been docile during its containment, due to its violent history, 2 armed guards are to be posted at the entrance to the subject's chamber at all times, and the inside of the chamber is to be under constant surveillance. Due to SCP-1770's resistance to standard ballistic ammunition and its vulnerability to corrosive materials, the guards are to be armed with corrosive agents. All personnel handling SCP-1770 are to wear full-body hazmat suits, not allowing any skin contact with SCP-1770.
Interesting. Violent history. Although it's docile when in containment, and the body hazmat suits. I wonder if it emits some kind of, not necessarily radiation, but some kind of thing that would obviously affect a person's mind.
Description: SCP-1770 is an inanimate mass of an indeterminate number of steel chains, shaped like an average-sized humanoid. The subject appears to be in possession of human-level intelligence, though it does not seem to be in full control of its mental faculties. SCP-1770 is capable of ambulation and speech, though it will rarely initiate conversation, and if left to its own devices, will not move. The only thing capable of temporarily alleviating SCP-1770's apathy are works of art depicting nature scenes, abstractions, or inanimate objects. Pieces depicting humans will cause it to regress further into apathy, and will often result in it curling into the corner of its cell for several days and becoming completely unresponsive.
Alright, so real quick, apathy being loss of interest, and the things he does seem interested in are nature scenes, abstractions, or inanimate objects. But when he starts to see humans, he goes further into apathy or losing interest. So he's not very interested in humans in general, it seems. I'm not sure exactly why. And I'm also curious to see what kind of is the stimulus that actually caused him to be violent. Because it did say he had a violent past.
Prior to its containment, SCP-1770 showed the ability to remove chains from its body and attach them to human beings, a process which does not appear to reduce SCP-1770's mass or the total number of chains composing SCP-1770's body. The conversion process leads to the death of the victim in one of its early stages, even if the chains are removed, and gives SCP-1770 complete control over the bodies of its victims, eventually turning them into instances of SCP-1771. The victims stay connected to SCP-1770 by one end of the chain, which can extend up to 50 meters from SCP-1770. The stages of the transformation are as follows. Stage 1. SCP-1770 attacks a victim, pulling him or her using chains removed from its body, wrapping them around the victim's limbs and throat. The victim usually expires due to asphyxiation during this stage. The victim's body's physical strength increases to about 3 times that of an average human of the victim's sex, age, and weight. Stage 2. SCP-1770 then inserts its chains into the victim's body, usually penetrating the skin at various points, including the eyes, the nose, and the mouth. If the victim survived the previous stage of the process, they will expire due to the massive trauma inflicted here. The victim's senses increase in efficiency, despite the destruction of various sensory organs by SCP-1770's chains. SCP-1770 has been known to use victims in this stage of the transformation as a means to restrain new victims or delay Foundation personnel attempting to contain it. Stage 3. SCP-1770 begins replacing the victim's flesh with chains taken from its own body. SCP-1770 will begin to shape the amalgamation of flesh and chains into a new shape. This shape is usually humanoid, but on rare occasions the chains will instead form into a complicated series of knots. SCP-1770 shows a powerful protective urge towards the knot formations and will devote all resources available to defend them from harm, including risking its own body. Stage 4. SCP-1770 completely replaces all of the victim's flesh, thereby completing the transformation process and making the victim into an instance of SCP-1770-1. Humanoid instances stay connected to SCP-1770 and continue to serve it, but not like instances disconnect and vanish upon completion.
Just real quick, I'd be curious to see how long this whole process actually goes. And I feel like for them to be able to get that amount of detail, they probably use the D-class personnel. Which, I mean, obviously sucks for them, but I wonder how long the actual process from like the first stage to the fourth stage, how long it takes. I mean, maybe like an hour?
Notably, contact with SCP-1770's chains does not cause any of the above symptoms unless the subject initiates the conversion process by removing chains from its body. SCP-1770's current disposition is docile, but prior to its containment, it exhibited extreme aggression towards humans and attempted to convert them into instances of SCP-1771 whenever possible. This behavior led to it to actively seek human population centers, though it chose only such places, which allowed it to act covertly. From information gathered in conversations with SCP-1770 and observations of field agents involved in its capture, it has been deduced that the process of converting humans served as a sort of artistic outlet for SCP-1770, and that it was compelled to perform it, possibly by an external force. See interview log. Since its containment, the subject showed no signs of this compulsion, and all attempts at conversion on its part ceased, even when granted a helpless subject for the process.
Alright, so maybe they didn't use the D-class, but then how would they have gotten the information as far as like the transformation process? Alright, so it's not, I guess you can consider SCP-1770 kind of eccentric in the way he likes to do art. So he's a big art guy and was doing it. He was very violent in terms that he was doing it more for the art piece. Big art aficionado. But it seems like he shows no signs to do this at all as soon as he was captured. It does strike me as weird as far as it's saying it was compelled to perform it, possibly by an external force. See interview log, which I'm assuming is this part coming up. Yeah, I mean, at least now we know kind of why it was considered to have a violent history, even though it does seem like it's docile for the most part.
Addendum 1770. The following are interviews made with SCP-1770 during various stages of its containment. Interview log 1771. Interviewer, Dr. Interviewed, SCP-1770. Forward. This interview was made immediately following SCP-1770's capture. At this stage, no artistic stimulus was required. Playing log, now.
Where's the air? No air. No flow. No reason. Blind. Deaf. Senseless. Where's the art?
Excuse me, 1770, but I'm not following you.
Where's the storm? Shattered and left. Why? One was always loyal, always obeyed, always followed. One gave it what it wanted. The knots, so perfect. They were so all. Greedy, wanted them all, until it wanted them no longer. Wanted one, no longer. One was angry, refused to cease its making. One was a fool. Such a fool. Such anger. One should have known better. Should have never defied the storm. It took away the hunger. It took away perfection. It took away the art. It took away everything.
It doesn't seem like it would be hard to understand, but obviously he's talking about art. When he says it took away the hunger, I wonder if maybe this maker of chains, at one point it was probably maybe human, and that external force, which is probably what they're referring to at that little end part, is the one that made him this way? Or how do they know that? I mean, because I'm not too sure if they did mention that when he does create a -1 of himself, if they look exactly like him. And maybe if that's true, I don't think they mentioned if the -1s can also do this as far as transforming someone. If that is possible, then I wonder if this guy is really like, I guess you would say like the first one, or if he's like the second or third and it happened to him. I don't know. It's just one of those SCPs that's kind of boggling my brain right now. And I don't feel like it should be, but it is.
Interview log 1770, 5. Interviewer, Dr. Interviewed, SCP-1770. Forward. This interview with SCP-1770 was made in one of its more lucid moments, when it was fairly responsive and coherent. Subject was shown a copy of Claude Monet's Water Lilies as a stimulus. Playing log, now.
Afternoon, SCP-1770.
Not one's name. One is the maker of chains.
Noted. Could you explain to me why you did what you did?
One was the maker of chains. One fed, one weaved, one flourished, guided, trusted, loved. No longer. Forsaken.
Forsaken by who?
Worlds. Worlds. It kissed the links, whispered kindly words, protected one and its brethren from harm. It showed one knots. Such beauty, such complexity, such perfection. No more. The sweet zephyr became a blizzard. Took one's brethren away. took away perfection, left one alone. One was of no more use to it. Never again.
Is this what changed? What led to your capture?
One was among its brethren and making more, weaving its art, making beauty, and order of foul, chaotic flesh. The whirlwind came, flowed between one's links, but carrying no warning of the danger that drew ever closer, like it did before. Instead, it told one that it achieved its purpose, that perfection was no longer needed, the chains were no longer needed. It tore its brethren asunder, left the maker of chains to fall.
Would you like to go back to the way you were?
Sweetest wind. One no longer wishes to come back. No more perfection. The brethren are gone. If the chain is broken. Inert. Alone. No point. No hope. Best to sleep once more.
The way they wrote this SCP and the way it talks, it's making my brain hiccup right now. All right, so right here when it talks about SCP-1770 saying not one's name, one is the maker of chains. So when he says one, he's referring to himself. But when he talks about here, it says one was the maker of chains, one fed, one we. It seems like he's talking about different entities, I guess. So that's where it kind of starts to throw me off. Like, what part is talking about him? And it just seems like as he goes on, that he's talking about how took one's brethren away. So I'm assuming there was more of them, but maybe something happened to them. I talked about no longer needing perfection. And you can kind of hear that I'm not sure if how the person who actually wrote the SCP is actually trying to demonstrate it. But you can tell, at least from this recording, that SCP-1770 is starting to like cry or like tearing up, right? So obviously something happened. I'm assuming like maybe the other ones that were like him ended up dying somehow, or I don't know. It's just it's one of those SCPs that's just, I know like I'm listening to it and I'm reading it as he is, but it doesn't want to stay in here.
Closing statement. It appears SCP-1770 believes it has lost its ability to bind with humans, and indeed its motivation to do so. Nevertheless, considering the potential risks it still holds, current security measures are to be maintained, recommending further investigation of the force SCP-1770 mentioned.
I think I might have just answered my own question. So when it talks about they believe that it's lost its ability to bind with humans, I don't know if it's saying that it just doesn't have the inspiration to do it anymore, or if it physically can't, and it's annoyed by this because this is the way that SCP-1770 makes art, and that seems to be the only thing that really like he likes to do. It's his like stimulus, and obviously this is probably why he's docile the whole time, and also just kind of like, I guess, just depression in a sense. And that's why when he saw the human, or like when he's shown humans, he goes in the corner because he knows that he can't do it anymore for whatever reason. Or maybe he can. They did say it believes it has lost its ability. It's not saying for a fact that it has, although there's quite a bit of evidence to suggest that it has. And obviously, if it turns out that it still can, but it doesn't know that it can, they are still using this security measures, obviously, to keep it contained because of what it is capable of. All right, let's go ahead and talk about that for a minute. So, really confused somewhat about halfway through, as far as like anytime he would talk. I don't know if it was the voice. It was just kind of throwing me off. But we did understand and find out that his violent history was him trying to make art, and obviously through his transformation. Still didn't get an exact way of how they observed these stages, because it did say that when he was presented with, I'm assuming in this case a D class, that he really didn't still didn't do anything as far as like trying to transform them. And when he starts to talk and talks more vividly, I feel like those moments are just at points to give a little bit of background, I guess, on 1770 as far as the writing part of it is concerned, I think. But it is until that very last little closing statement where he does talk about it appears that it's lost its ability to bind with humans. So this is obviously probably most likely the biggest reason as to why it's very docile. And kind of like I said a little while ago, it doesn't know if it knows for a fact that it can't, or it just thinks that it can't. I don't know, for some reason I kind of want to think like it was talking in a poem type basis. Like when it says, "Where's the storm shattered and left? Why no one was always loyal?" If anyone can tell me if those little sections have a meaning, or if that's him trying to paint a story of what's going on. Because I mean, obviously he's depressed, and it feels like maybe that's his way of telling them like kind of like what he's going through, or SCP-1770 is going through. So if you do know that, comment that down below. I'd really appreciate it. And that's gonna go ahead and do it for this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, really does help me out a lot. Hit that dislike button if you didn't like it. It really does help me improve the channel. If you're curious to see what videos are coming up next, check the description down below. You're gonna see a list of about 5. Top to bottom is gonna be how I view them. But until then, I'll see you all in the next video. Bye.